I think that one of the things that this group is about telling the truth. And one of my frustrations about the whole illegal immigration debate is that so often the truth is not told. And so I would like to give you my experience. As was mentioned, when I entered the state legislature 6 years ago, I was a little bit naive. I thought the fact that my wife was a legal immigrant, that I was actually married in the Ukraine. I made 4 separate trips to Moscow, overnight train rides on a Soviet train. If you've ever experienced that, that's quite the experience. One for the initial visa, one for a background check of my wife, one for a medical checkup for my wife, and then one for our actual final visa to make sure that we'd actually been married for 6 months like we'd been. So I've experienced that immigration process from start to finish. Well, I thought that would somehow protect me. I thought it would also protect me that my business partner is from Ethiopia, that my family sponsored. I have a sister-in-law from South Korea, a sister-in-law from the Ukraine. I have 2 adopted nieces from China. And again, when I entered this debate, I thought that somehow naively would protect me. But over the last 6 years, I've been called a racist, fascist, unchristian, uncompassionate, a foaming-at-the-mouth zealot, simply because I believe the immigration process should be fair and we should not discriminate. And so what I would like to do is kind of give some talking points about my experience and a way to talk about it. For me, the truth needs to get out there because our current policy is actually a racist policy. It's actually discriminating against those that are going through the process correctly. Now, despite what you read in the newspaper, this is the America that I believe in. This is one of my favorite quotes. It says, "America, multi-raced and multi-nationed, is by tradition, by geography, by citizenry, by natural sympathy and material interest, the great neutral nation of the earth. God so designed it, drawn from all races, creeds, and nations. Our sympathies run to every oppressed people." And that's from J. Reuben Clark, who was an Undersecretary of State and U.S. Ambassador, who's also an LDS apostle. That's the America that I believe. I believe that America is the shining light on the hill. And I have been all around this world, over 30 countries, and I've met hundreds of people that would love to come to this country. And by tolerating illegal immigration, we are, and I'll show this, how dramatic it has become. This is, when you look at that last quote, this is what the makeup of the United States looked like in 1970. If you look at that, what does that tell you? That tells you that we are actually being fair to all nations from around the world. And it also, we talk about the importance of immigration, because I do. There are some that differ, that are against immigration. I believe in immigration. But this, when you look at a trend like that, that lends itself to, you have to have immigration and the melting pot. If you just have immigration, then you get what's happened in the Balkans. You have Balkanizations where people start to, they call it the salad bowl theory now. People don't melt. Well, this is what it was in 1970. And this lends itself to the melting pot. The Italian has to learn English to speak with the person from Mexico. The person from Germany has to learn English to speak to the person from Poland. That is how our nation was made so great. This is what absolutely frightens me. This was what it was like in 2000. Mexico had 7 times the next nearest country. That does not lend itself to a melting pot. When you look at those countries, too, half of those countries speak one language, Spanish. Now, I have nothing against Hispanics, and I often get accused of that. Despite my campaign manager that I just finished an election, Arturo is from Mexico. And actually, if you talk to a lot of Hispanics, they feel the most discrimination, actually, because I've had constituents come up to me and say, "Chris, I came here legally from Mexico, but everybody assumes that I'm illegal, so they won't pay me a full wage." Or, wink, wink, "We know these documents aren't real, and so they won't promote me because they think at some point I'll be deported." But that's not talked about in the press. And so This, to me, is of a great concern of our nation, is that we're on the verge of becoming a bilingual, bicultural nation. And no nation has ever survived that. You look, even people point to Belgium. There was a bill after 300 years to divide Belgium between the French and the Flemish. English language is the great unifier. And there's actually studies that show, and these are not from right-wing organizations, these are studies that show that once a population reaches over 20% of the population, then people don't tend to assimilate. They stick within that. They don't do it culturally or language-wise. This, again, after being called so many names, I like to use the academic terms. This is where the majority of illegal aliens come from. 60%, that's actually 62% now from Mexico, another 22% now actually from Latin America. And so what really is happening, to put it in language terms, is we're discriminating against the person from Asia. We're discriminating against the black African or the Russian Jew that's coming. This kind of shows you where the world's population is, and then you look at who's getting the benefit of legal immigration. And so so when somebody throws out a term and calls you racist, if you want to get into a bantering back and forth, you can actually say, no, this is the very definition of institutional racism. We are discriminating against those individuals that are trying to come. One of the things that is often overlooked is in 2002, 13 million people applied for 55,000 green card lottery slots. And so in this debate, you will hear a lot about the word compassion. Well, where is the compassion for the 99.7% of individuals that did not get a green card lottery slot and obeyed the law anyway? I've been outside the embassies in Kiev and Moscow, and I've seen parents in tears when they were denied visas. Most people don't realize just what the standard of living of the Ukraine, where my wife is from, is compared to Mexico. It's actually half that of Mexico. You look at Mexico has an average GDP per capita of 14,000. Turkey is 11,000. American Samoa is 8,000. Ukraine, where my wife is 7,400. Where my business partner is Ethiopia, is $800. And so if we're going to use compassion as the sole determination of who gets to come to this country, there's about 5 billion people that are more deserving to come to this country than those that we're currently allowing through our lax immigration policies. Again, this just goes to reiterate, again, the standard of living. And like I said, I'm not picking on Mexico other than people justify it to say, well, the living conditions are so difficult in Mexico that people have to come here. Well, again, you look at the life expectancy in America, Samoa is 73 years. In Russia, it's 66. In Haiti, it's 60. In Ethiopia, where my business partner's from, is 55. Again, if compassion is going to be the reason that we tolerate illegal immigration, then there's 5 billion people that are more deserving of our compassion. But I'm also an elected leader, and so I have to worry about trends. You know, we all know that our deficit problem is creating a major problem. Here's some facts that the newspaper, for some reason I've given these numbers to the newspapers, but they won't print them. For TANF, childcare and food stamps, I don't know if you think they have an agenda. I guess we can all say that now if I'm a conspiratorialist because I believe that the newspaper has an agenda, then so be it. But these are the numbers that this is the problem that we have in the state. In 2008, we spent $12 million on those benefits, on welfare benefits. But this is just for the children of the illegal aliens. Okay? In 2009, it was $24 million. And in 2010, it was $41 million. Now, does anybody see a problem with that trend? So the other thing that's not talked about, too, is that, you know, on the floor of the House, I have to sometimes, you know, I have a certain religious belief and certain principles that I believe, but you can always argue moral principles from also from a policy position. For example, I think most people in this room believe that marriage is important. The fact of the matter is, what's not talked about is that the typical illegal alien actually has twice the out-of-wedlock birth rate as the normal citizen. And the reason I bring that up is that somebody that's born out of wedlock is 7 times more likely to be on government assistance throughout their life than somebody that's born in a marriage. And so when I'm on the floor of the House, I can't use my belief in the 10 Commandments to debate that, but I can use that this is the cost to society. Are we willing to do it? Can we afford that? And my argument is that we can't. That we have some very difficult things that are growing. This Health and Human Services in the state of Utah is growing at 22% a year. You look at this, these are the births of illegal aliens. And so what happens is, with an illegal alien, a birth is considered a emergency procedure. And so somebody comes into the hospital for a birth, the state of Utah immediately pays for it. Those are the birth rates. 2010 it went down just because it was a partial year. I should actually take that down, and I haven't been able to get 2011 yet. But see, that trend is not good, as that continues to grow. Another thing that frustrating with this debate is that the newspaper won't tell you the true crime statistics. I've had to dig for these. What they'll do is they've taken the general population of those in prison and simply said, well, that there's roughly 4% illegal aliens and 5% in the general population is illegal aliens. What they don't tell you is the vast majority of crimes are actually first-degree felonies, which is usually about a year in prison. And if you're the state of Utah for a first-degree felon, and you have to decide between spending $40,000 to incarcerate somebody or a $200 plane ticket to send somebody back to their home country, which would you do? You'd spend the $200. And so it skews the numbers. So you have to look at some of the serious crimes. Rape of a child, first degree, 19% are illegal aliens, almost 21% in 2011. Rape first degree, 13%. Murder first degree, 16%. First degree felons in Utah, it's 10%. And that does not include, we have roughly 330 illegal aliens in the prison system right now. But what's not included is, in 2010, for example, 435 individuals that would have been in our prison system were actually sent, because of their violation and the seriousness of the crime, were actually sent to the federal prison system. So our illegal alien population in the prison system would go up by 150% just in 1 year had the federal government not taken those individuals. What's even more astounding is the reason the crime statistics are skewed so much is a lot of times people are arrested, not prosecuted, simply deported immediately. For example, in 2010, and the 2011 numbers are only partial numbers, 7,000 individuals, aggravated felons were, 4,000 aggravated felons were deported. Those would be they would be back in our system if we didn't deport them. And so again, that's not what the press does not tell you about. And so for me, again, you'll hear this debate about, it's the rule of law versus compassion. Maybe it should be defined as the rule of law versus discriminatory compassion, is what my wife calls it. Why don't people love people from the Ukraine equally as they love people from Latin America? Or the rule of law versus convenience. I really believe that if people understood the full cost of illegal immigration, that the perspective would be much different. Or the rule of law versus perceived practicality. The amount of cost that it's costing us right now. You look at what happens with an ESL student in the K through 12, costs roughly twice for an ESL student. And here's the frightening thing for me, and this is what I can't. I've taken some punches for standing up on this issue, and I was at a town hall meeting this last year, about 2 months ago. And this individual in West Valley came up to me and said, Chris, every week a U-Haul pulls up and 30 individuals hop out of the back of this U-Haul. And I was going to report it. But my neighbor said, this is run by the cartel. If you report this, you will be killed. So you have people here in West Valley that are afraid, and I argue when you reach that point, you're not completely free. And if you ever, and again, I was the sponsor, Uncaring Chris, I was the first sponsor of the first human trafficking bill in the state of Utah. You know the number one way that people get caught up in the horrors of human trafficking? It's the promise of a job. And so we're all bear the responsibility by tolerating illegal immigration for those people that come across the border. If you ever see the rape trees, or there's a documentary called Which Way Home that shows these young children that follow. Many of them die, many of them are raped, or many of them are actually caught up in human trafficking. So we think that we're compassionate by tolerating illegal immigration. We're just the opposite. My big concern is I believe that there's three great threats facing the United States. One is the acceptance of socialism, one is the undermining of the rule of law, and the third is the acceptance of multiculturalism. And I could go on and debate those. But illegal immigration cuts across all of those, because many of these people that are coming here from illegally are coming from socialist countries or getting on the welfare system. You undermine the rule of law, because I feel very strongly about this issue. Because again, I've seen those people. I have friends. I have a neighbor from the Philippines that have been waiting 20 years to bring a family member. They feel very strongly. But the problem is, we live in a pretty stable society. We think that it'll always be that way. But you go to most of the world, and having a civil society that I obey laws that I don't like because you obey laws that you don't like, that's what gives us our freedom. But that starts to break down. If you stop obeying laws that you don't like, then I'm going to stop obeying laws that I don't like. And I'm almost to the point of that where I'm going to start telling my friends, hey, if you really want to come here, then just come here illegally, live under the system for 20 years. Well, to me, that doesn't seem right, because we start to break down. My business partner from Ethiopia, his mother came here on a visa. When her visa expired, he sent her back to Ethiopia. And the reason he did that is that he's so grateful for the opportunities that is provided in this great country, that he recognizes that the rule of law is that important. And again, those opposed to illegal aliens are opposed to legal immigration. I can't tell you how many debates I've been to that were supposed to be illegal immigration versus legal immigration, and all of a sudden they morphed it into immigration versus non-immigration. Frankly, I believe in immigration, but it should be from all places around the world, and it should be from all stratas of income. The typical illegal alien has an 8th grade education level. Somebody with less than a high school education level costs about $1 million over the lifetime of their life. They draw $1 million more in benefits than they actually put into the system. And so we tend to, and this is kind of the multicultural, the social justice theory, is that the only people that are deserving to come to America are poor people. Well, I served an LDS mission in Sweden, which has a high standard of living. But I can tell you that many people in Sweden don't feel completely free. And I have friends from Sweden that would love to come to this country. And so that we need to bring, for example, Germany, if you have an engineering degree, you automatically get a work permit in Germany. And so we're competing against Germany, but we seem to be doing it just backwards. I'm not saying that we should only take skilled labor from other places, but we need to take different stratas. That way everybody feels the pressure of illegal immigration. Because I can guarantee you, if university professors were feeling that same pressure, downward pressure on wages as the working class individuals, they would have a different perspective. Because truly we're crushing the working class right now. It used to be 100 years ago that 98% of the jobs didn't require what was called skilled labor. Now it's only 24%. And then when you look at that 24% of the population is absorbing the majority of illegal immigration, and there's a downward pressure on wages. And so we really are discriminating against those individuals. I do have, again, this comes down to, I just want to show, this was actually ran, and you know that companies don't spend money without doing research. This was actually run in Mexico for Absolute Vodka. And There's the concept, people will downplay it, the concept of Aztlán, that believing that the western part of the United States belongs to Mexico. But this was actually run in a newspaper in Mexico. Then there was kind of an outcry, and they backed off on it. But one of the great myths that you'll hear is there's a couple of the sayings is, you know, we didn't cross the border crossed us. I actually pulled up the census from 1850. If anybody has the right to complain about, it's the American Indian, but it's not Mexico that has the right to complain. I pulled up the census, and I could not find a single Mexican individual in the state in the 1850 census. You'll hear that the land was stolen. With the Treaty of Hidalgo, we paid $15 million for the western part of the United States, which was a lot of money back then, considering that we had just won a war. We also paid another $3 million because there have been cross-border raids by the Mexican army, and so we paid American citizens. So it was really $18 million that we paid. The thing that the reason I wrote the book, The Forgotten Immigrant, is because I truly believe that the voice that is left out of this entire debate is the person that doesn't have the voice. It is the forgotten immigrant. It is the immigrant that is here, that is having to compete against those with the crime, or competing against those that are getting paid under the table. It's those that are waiting, like I said, up to 20 years in the Philippines now. And again, the feeling is too is that Hispanics have a specific, this is not against Hispanics, because those that have done it legally have a very similar opinion, but there are radicals within that group. For 6 years, I've been trying to get these facts out. I've been trying to get them to come and interview legal immigrants. I've given them dozens of names. I know people from South Africa, from Kenya, from Ghana, from Japan, from China. Ask them how they feel about and I believe that there's a good reason for them to go through this process. America is the greatest nation in the world, and we're facing some major struggles, and we're going to feel some pain if we don't change things rather quickly, and I think that's why this group is here. But it is still the greatest, and who gets to come to this country should not be determined on their willingness to break the law or not. And that's what my whole battle has been about. For me, I can give, again, the crime statistics. It's absolutely frightening when you talk to farmers now that live in central Utah that are afraid now to go out at night because they might stumble across a cartel with a cash crop, where we're actually given advisories now to go in the back country to be careful. Once you start to have that happen, I argue that you've lost a big piece of your freedom. And you look at what has happened just in the last month in the state of Utah with the number of crash crops that are. And the problem is that illegal aliens, many are good people. But what happens is when you have that group, the cartels can move in, the others in. But also there's a crime that's called manslaughter. I have a good friend, my business partner from Ethiopia. He lost his nephew. Had been waiting 5 years in a refugee camp to come. He died in that process. I consider that to manslaughter. Those that are coming here illegally are taking those spots of other individuals, and so there is a serious crime. Again, the point that I want to get across is that this is the greatest country in the world, and who gets to come here shouldn't be determined by their willingness to break the law, and we need to be very careful on what we describe as compassion versus non-compassion. Is my time up, or do I have? Okay. Anyway, I appreciate that. I appreciate there's many people that actually in this group that I've had great respect for, and so thank you very much for having me today. Thank you.